Hi, good morning, Philippines, and good evening, California. And today we do have Eric Brandstad with us. He's our special guest for today, and he's very
Yes.
knowledgeable. We're so excited for him to be with us today. And we do have Kuya Ed and also Bertrick with us.
Hello
All
po.
right.
Hey, Dan.
Hello, good evening, good morning, everybody. How are you guys?
Pretty
Good,
well.
good. And actually, if you guys don't know, Eric, you have a website. I just checked it out earlier. And just to let everyone know, Eric is a greenhouse, farm, and industry expert that has been in the industry for over 30 years. Even his
Wow.
Yes.
family from way back, am I correct? Your family has been commercially farming since 1862. So that's like a
Yeah, that's
long, long
right.
time ago. Yes.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yes. Like
And
Family
legend.
farmers, generational farmers. That's crazy. That's
yes.
crazy.
Like OG, man. OGs.
And in the Philippines, I'm pretty sure we do have a lot of farmers there because our land is like full of agriculture. It's like a gold there for agriculture.
Yes.
Our
It's
land is
it's a
really
gold mine for agriculture. Yes, sir.
yes.
Yes, ma'am.
And just to let everyone know, Eric is also a teacher in Oxfordam University, and Oxfordam is the first cannabis university ever. Is that correct? Ever in the whole world?
I think so.
Yeah, and that's in Oakland, so it's just a few drive away from us, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, how's your experience with farming, Eric? Especially since you got it from your parents and probably from your grandparents too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I grew up on the family farm, doing everything that we do on the farm. Basically, it was a lot of row crops at the time when I was a kid. So kidney beans, tomatoes, sugar beets, things like that, basically. And then later on, I got into cannabis, and the family wasn't as into cannabis as I was, I guess. And so
You're
I
the first one in
yeah,
your
I was the
family.
first one. And so
You're the first one.
I left in 1992 when I graduated high school, and I went up to Humboldt County to kind of follow my passion, I guess you could say. And the farm now has changed. Where I grew up is all walnuts and almonds and cherries. It's all trees. There's no more row crops. It's mostly all trees everywhere. And so they never really got into the hemp or cannabis side of things. And so basically, I've just kind of stayed my path the whole time. And I was only in Humboldt for a few years, learned a lot, and then after that, made my way to where I am now, which is just above Sacramento, between Lake Tahoe and Sacramento, California.
And I know that you also know one of our guests that we had Joey Burger last
Is
January.
that where you guys meet?
Yeah, you have the same community because yeah.
A little bit. I mean, it's kind of a funny story with Joey, because Joey actually is a super legend in my opinion.
Yes.
So where he's from in Southern Humboldt, where he was born and raised, is kind of the ground zero or the homeland for California cannabis cultivation, especially back in the early 90s and 80s and 70s. But for me, when I got into it in the early 90s, there's a place that his family built called Heartwood Institute way out in the mountains in Humboldt County. And that's actually, like I said, a hotspot area for cannabis
Yeah.
cultivation, even back when I was a kid. And so I used to actually go. Heartwood was like a meeting spot, even though nobody went to Heartwood. We didn't actually go inside. We didn't know the people. It was a easy place to find, and had signs that led to Heartwood, and there was a big parking lot. So even though we weren't going to actually see anybody at Heartwood, we would meet in the parking lot, and sometimes that's where our deals would get done. And so I didn't really meet Joey until I want to say, shoot, and only in the last 7 or 8 years. And
Oh,
so when Joey and I met, maybe it's closer to 10 now, but it's still fairly new. I reconnected with or connected with Joey, and then talked
Yes.
That was such a good
a
story.
lot of
I know.
yeah.
what happened?
So
Why it
Uh,
stops?
there you
Oh,
go. There you
Why
go. It
wait,
stopped
it
for a
stops.
while.
It
It
stopped for a
stopped
while.
when you said I
When he said,
reconnected
like,
with Joey, and then
So yeah, I connected with Joey, probably 10 years ago, and then talked about these stories of how I used to travel out to the mountains and to Heartwood, and he goes, "Oh, well, that's where I grew up, and that's where my family's from." And so
oh,
I got to hear a lot of the stories about that side of things, when I was over on the other side of the parking lot, I guess you could say. And so it really brought everything together, hearing everything from Joey and my experiences and that kind of thing. So he's a good guy.
yeah, he was
yeah, man.
talking about permaculture too.
Yes.
Do you also practice that when it comes to your growing?
Permaculture is site to site. Like my current permaculture farm wouldn't be the same as your permaculture farm, even though we're both practicing permaculture. And so each farm's permaculture design is set up, site specific for those particular, farms.
Yeah.
And so with the farm that I had when I was growing, I didn't actually do permaculture. It's the next step in organic. I think it's far deeper into organics. And so my farm wasn't permaculture, and then I've actually moved in the last year, and so I've moved to a place that's actually in the forest, and so we haven't really established where we're going to garden this year. And so it is kind of permaculture in the sense that I am in the natural forest and surrounded by all these trees, but we got to get some more sun in here before we can actually start gardening.
Yeah.
And also, because I think some of the people who are watching have no idea that you also judge, when it comes to cannabis events, you judge different strains. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Emerald Cup in particular is the competition that's fairly well known and still around. A lot of them have disappeared over the years, come and go. And so the Emerald Cup is a competition once a year, and so I'm a flower judge. They have a lot of categories, but flower is one of them. And so I've been judging the Emerald Cup for 6 or 7 years now. And so we get a couple hundred samples, 1 gram samples, or give or take about a gram sample of all these different flowers to try from all over the state of California. And so it's pretty exciting time. We're actually getting close to getting the entries soon and begin the judging process. March 25th is when we begin.
It must be so tough having to go through 100 1-gram samples.
Yeah, it's a lot of joints.
I always want to join, but then I always don't have
Just
enough.
get wild highs depending on what you're trying out, huh?
Yeah, well,
But how
I
you
just
do
feel nice. What's that?
But how do you do it? Like, how do you judge the flower? Like, like for wine, right? People smell it, drink it, and then quote their 9,000, I don't know, taste over there, taste bud over there, and then they do it like that. But on cannabis, how do you do it? Like, how do you know what terpene it is? Like,
So we have a scorecard or a judge's sheet that we get, and basically it's broken up also in the dominant terpenes. So not only do we just get a jar with a number on it, that's it. And the jar
Okay.
might have a sticker on it that's a color code, and the color code goes along with the dominant terpene. And so we're not necessarily trying to judge which is the best terpene either. It's just giving us an idea of
and also the
what dominant
cannabinoids.
terpene is.
What to
And so,
expect.
yeah, what to expect. So that, limonene, beta caryophyllene, terpenoline, ocimene, pinene. And so all these different terpenes are listed as far as, which one as color code. So we get a jar with a number on it, and then a sticker that might be a blue sticker, a green sticker, or a yellow sticker that coordinates with, that dominant terpene. And then for judging, though, there is a criteria that we're judging against, and it's appearance, smell,
The
taste,
effect.
high. And I kind of forget right now. It's written down. But for me, when I'm looking at the flowers, the first thing that I do is look at it, and then I also smell it. Like, it does have to have a good appearance. It does have to smell good, and then I start to squeeze it, and then eventually, begin to break it open a little bit and see what the inside looks like.
You
And
want
then,
that bag appeal first, don't you?
Yeah,
As
I
soon as
mean,
you open the
there
bag,
can
the
be.
first thing you do is look at it, you hold it, and you smell it. You get the bag feel.
Well, and there are like a lot of old strains, like when people talk about landrace and older strains that don't look so good but have a really good high and are powerful medicine a
Right.
lot of times. And so,
Yes.
it's hard. It's hard to get stuck on looks a lot of times, even though that's kind of our first thing that our brain sees something and goes, "Oh, I really like the looks of that." And some of
Right,
the
right.
ones that look really good don't have any smell, and when you grind them up, they turn into powder. And so that's one of my main judging criteria is what it does
I'm
when I
not gonna lie,
grind
I've
it up.
had some of those. I've harvested some of those. So yeah, it's pretty disappointing right
Yeah,
away, isn't it?
they're too dry and they grind up into powder. It's kind of maybe the curing storage process wasn't so good, and it
Yeah.
can lose a lot of terps. But the nice thing that I like is when I grind it up, I like to smell it again, and when it smells
Mhm.
more powerful after grinding it,
Get all the
Yeah.
trichomes to pop and all the terpenes to flow. It smells so
yeah,
good.
yeah. That's where it gets good. And so then I roll one up, and whatever's left over, I can either save for another small joint, or sometimes I have a friend help me, and maybe they'll smoke it in a pipe or a bong or even a vape, flower vape. And that way we both smoke it two different ways and give each other a little bit of feedback.
That's cool. That's so cool.
Did you ever
Yeah.
stop during
Very.
like testing because you're testing like a lot to judge each and every one of them, right? Do you ever stop and say
Yeah.
like I'm too high? Wait, like,
Yeah. Yeah, a lot, all the time. You gotta
I'm too
stand
high
up
for
and
this
walk
shit.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get a
Yeah, I
drink
can't
and
judge this properly when I'm too high or something.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But like Bertrick was saying, kind of like a sommelier, when you light the joint, you're still kind of letting it go and maybe not inhaling right away. You're just getting it started and
It's
fired
really
up and letting the smoke go in and out of your mouth to get a little bit of flavor started there. before you
Smelling
actually
it is a
start
big
tasting
deal.
it.
Just
Yeah, I'm really
breathing
bad
it.
at
Yeah.
tasting. I don't know. I can't distinguish tasting, but the effect, yeah, I can really tell it. But for taste, man, I know it's hard for me.
It's hard for me too. There's no question. But when it tastes really good, that's when you know something's up. But
You
I
know
mean,
it
Yeah.
when
the
it's
taste,
good. You know it when
the
it's good.
taste, yeah, the taste can be tough. Dry hitting the joint before you light it gives you a little indication of some things. A lot of the stuff that I think
You
we
know what I
commonly
like to
do
do?
sometimes.
You know how when you get the joint right up to your lips, I like to stick my tongue right in front of the back end of that butt as you inhale, and you just get the smoke and all the all the wax in the air. You like to stick to your tongue, and you just taste everything. My lord, it's one of my
Yeah.
favorite ways to taste it. So
Well, and another way we look at, sometimes I look at the joint is how much resin it gets. If it gets clogged up as I'm smoking it, it gets really sticky and resiny, and because the effects are really important. It's not just it looks good and it smells good. The effects have to be there as well, and so Julie mentioned earlier about exotics, and I thought that was
Yes,
kind of
exotic
on
strains.
the
Mhm.
topic because a lot of people imagine. Maybe I did at times is exotic is something you don't see very often, and it's
Mhm.
maybe the best of the best. But the way that SC Labs and the way that the Emerald Cup has broken things down is that SC Labs is a lab in California that's been testing cannabis. I think for 20 years now, since we were medical in California, because we were medical for 20 years before we went into recreational
Great.
cannabis, which
Yep.
we
Yeah.
are now. But during the medical times, SC Labs was an original lab back in the day. And so with all the testing that they've done all these years, they've been able to determine through the terpenes also which is the most rare and which is the most common throughout the years. And so what they found is that pinene in particular, the dominant terpene pinene, when the bud is or the flower is dominant in the terpene pinene, is
Yeah.
what they consider exotic because that is the rarest. They don't find very many
What's the
pinene
example?
dominant. Huh?
What's the example of the strain?
A pinene dominant strain might be I gotta think, something from Green
It's
Shock
rare.
Farms, something like their passion orange guava or their I'll remember the other strain that they have. They have two strains. Tropical Sleigh Ride, I believe, might be a
Where they
dominant
came from?
pinene.
From which? From
Are those? Is
which
that a
genetics?
sativa? Is that a sativa most for
You
the
know,
most part?
they're more leaning sativas. I think, yeah, they are. They don't look much like a sativa because they really have a hard, indica
Round.
looking
Yeah.
bud. Yeah, round
Yes.
Yeah,
bud.
they're kind of rounded, huh?
Yeah, but they definitely are sativa leaning, and the pinene sometimes, man. There was a couple samples that I was going through last year, and they really knocked me on I mean, they floored me. I was like, this is amazing. Even though it didn't taste the best, it didn't have the greatest smell. It wasn't a winner. Nobody picked it as the top 10, but I mean, it got me floored. And I still need to ask those guys this year, like, what were those samples last year? Because I remember the numbers, 43 and 44. They
There
were
you
Yeah.
go.
unreal as far as the high goes. And if I need to find out what strains those were from last year, just because
But a good
I was
hit,
super
piney, no?
interested. Like, yeah, that was some meds.
You know,
Nice.
you know what? It was the legal, medically, not recreational yet. I feel like the strains before were much stronger. Is that true also? Because they kind of adjusted the I mean, I guess the high now that it's
Well,
recreational, or
I think the quality has gone down.
oh,
True.
Unfortunately, because yeah, we're dealing with bigger corporate farms now than we were before. We were dealing with a lot of smaller farmers originally. Since the beginning, we started with
Yes.
small farms,
Yeah,
and
man.
everybody's
That's what
just
how
gotten
we want to avoid. That's what how
yeah,
we
and
yes.
everybody's gotten bigger
Yeah,
and
that's why
bigger
you
and
have to start
bigger.
guiding us
Yeah,
not to be
yeah,
like that.
and the other problem though is that the dispensaries, in some ways, or maybe it's distribution, I don't know, but they keep wanting things cheaper. Like, hey,
Yeah, man. Yeah.
there's a big company that all of a sudden makes a product super cheap, and now it lowers the bar so that everything has to be that cheap, even if it comes from a craft grower.
Yeah.
So if something that is $20 a gram or $27 a gram, they only want to pay $20 a gram. And so, if a big corporate farm can push everything out at $20 a gram, but the small guy that everybody loves and is asking for is 27, the dispensary's not going to buy it. And then
yeah.
what's the farmer left to do?
Yeah,
In
he's
some
asked
ways,
out.
yeah,
Exactly. That's not what we
and that's
want.
why it's putting so many people out of business.
Because if it happens in the Philippines like that, man, it's gonna be much more poorer.
Yeah, that's
It's
something,
gonna be corrupt more, man.
we're here,
Well,
we're in California, and we don't have any problems getting marijuana as much as we want, anytime we want, in
Yeah.
different flavors that we want.
Yeah, it's easy
But for
yeah,
to.
the people in the Philippines, they need to see what what we've gone through, even
Yeah.
through the legalization, because
hmm
again, these are choices
It's
that
not
they
easy.
have to make. It's not
yeah.
us that we're making. We're just trying to open their eyes so that they understand what they're getting into. And
And a
it's
lot of
good. Once it's good, it's good. I mean, it's just responsibility, really,
A
accountability.
lot of times they start out medical, and then with the medical framework, a lot of times it sometimes opens the door for the bigger corporate people, because a lot of governments also get the idea that some of the bigger corporate people from America or United States or wherever have knowledge and know what to do to help avoid making mistakes, let's say. And sometimes they corner the market that way because some governments just are nervous and think, okay, these big corporate guys know what they're doing. They're in every state in the US. They should be, they must be the best, or they must be really good. So let's bring them in and have them set it up and show us how to do it, basically. And
Yeah,
so
but it's corporate
then
minded, corporate
yeah, and then
steered.
when it starts to go recreational, it already squashes out a lot of the smaller growers because they've already let in some of the bigger corporate interests in this idea that they know what they're doing and they're going to
Yeah.
maybe handle business, I guess you could say. And it's tough. One of the things that happened in New York that's kind of interesting is, in New York, when they started out their medical program, it was only the big companies, the big multi-state operators that were able to go in. And now that they've gone recreational in New York, they've said that now the MSOs, the multi-state operators, have to wait 3 years before they can participate in the recreational cannabis. They have to stay medical. And so in a lot of ways, that's great, because in New York, there's a lot of small farmers. It reminds me of California, because a lot of people are going for micro business licenses. That means, a 5,000 square foot grow, maybe distribution and a retail or whatever. They can manufacture edibles or something like that, all on their small farm. And I think that's great, because it gives a lot of the smaller people an opportunity that California ended up blowing. I mean, we were supposed to do the same thing, but they changed their minds real quick.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing what that is.
Yeah, and 3 years is plenty of time for any small farm that's already set up and growing on their own. 3 years is plenty of time to come up with a product or some sort of an idea to get their own supply out. So that's great. I think that works a lot better than just open it up. We're decriminalized, we're legalized. Yeah.
Yeah. And in some cases, it starts with the hemp farmers. If there's a legalized hemp program that goes on, sometimes those transition over to the cannabis, and that tends to be okay or a decent. It's not necessarily the same corporate model, I guess you could say. And so that's the tough part, is just hoping that the government will work with the locals and believe in the locals and who they want to bring in, rather than the government trying to rely on the corporate madness to come in and
that's
do their thing.
It'll be hard.
Yeah, I hope we have to avoid that.
Yeah,
we have to avoid that.
Like the Philippines should learn from our challenges here. Like the Philippines should learn from our challenges here, so they can have
instead
better.
Of copying.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of experts in their field, from all the way from growing all the way up to the politics of marijuana, and they have a big chance to listen to California here, especially.
Yeah, that'd be great. They can learn from our mistakes for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, learn from our mistakes.
Challenges too.
I wasn't trying to say it, but if you
don't copy California.
But I also want to ask Eric, because a lot of people don't know what light deprivation is, because you're also a pioneer for that technique, and you use that in your industry, like in your farming industry. What does that exactly mean, like light deprivation?
I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, it's funny. There's been a few terms over the years, and it's evolved, I guess you could say. And so, cannabis is a photoperiod plant, meaning that it needs a certain amount of light in order to make it grow or flower. And so if we're just trying to make the plant grow, if we're growing it indoors, it needs 18 hours of light to just grow and be in a vegetative state. In order for it to create the flowers that are the final product and end result, we need to shorten the daylight hours. And so on the indoor, we would change the lights from 18 hours of light down to 12 hours of light. And basically, that encourages the flowering cycle and the plant's finish. So now when we're working outside in the sun changes with the seasons. And so it's, depending on where you are in the world, it's not always constant. Some people are lucky and they have a better light schedule than we do. But here we have to manipulate the plants if we're using the sun. And we can't turn the sun off like we can the lights. And so what we do is we put the plants in the dark by covering them up with a curtain. And so some of the greenhouses have an automated curtain that makes the greenhouse close up, and then it simulates darkness. And sometimes if it's a small greenhouse, we can just pull a tarp over by hand and cover up the plants. And so, if it's a few plants, even you can do it in a small box. And one of the reasons that I say light deprivation has a few different names over the years is it started out with being called black boxing. And so what people would do is they would take a cardboard box, the biggest cardboard box you could find, and you would go individually cover up your plants outside. And so the plants weren't very big. Sometimes it depended on how big your cardboard box is, but sometimes with a dishwasher or a washer and dryer, sometimes you can get a pretty big cardboard box and cover up your plants. And so black boxing was the technique that I learned about in 1992 when I moved to Humboldt. People were just trying to get a crop in early, because what happens is in the springtime when people plant seeds, they have to wait all summer long until the end of the summer to harvest their plants. And same thing with clones. A lot of people will put a clone out in the springtime, maybe even in the beginning of summer, and they still have to wait till the end of summer because our days start to shorten naturally. And so as the days shorten naturally and the plants begin to flower, everybody harvests around the same time historically in California. And so right around October, when everybody's harvesting, the price goes down. And so originally
A
in
lot
the
of
90s,
supply.
when people, yeah, a lot of supply. And so the key is if you could finish before everybody else, you would get the best dollar. And so in order to black box your plants and be done at the beginning of October or the end of September, you were getting a premium for your product at that time. And so it definitely started to get more and more, and that's why we see the term, or saw the term, light deprivation brought in, because nobody was using boxes anymore. They started pulling a tarp over a greenhouse and putting the whole greenhouse in the dark rather than one plant.
What I'm doing
And
right now with my plants right now, I'm just having it in my closet. I open it in the morning for the sunlight, because we move in an apartment. That's what I'm doing right now for
yeah,
my indoor, and then close
that's
it
great.
later on.
Yeah, that's light depth. I mean,
That's what I
that's great.
like.
We had people that would do it the same thing with a garage. They would, put their plants maybe on a table with wheels, and they
Yeah,
would open the garage door, wheel the plants out into the sun for the daytime, and then wheel them into the garage and close the garage door to put them in the dark. Because, basically when they're long days like that, you have to put them in the dark before the sun goes down. And how you do that is, like Bertrick said, or the garage or the greenhouse. And now with the advancement in technology, the greenhouses can do it automatically. And so these bigger greenhouses that are automatic will close
yes,
the curtains for you and put the plants in the dark. And so you don't have to actually do it yourself. And so there's a few ways to do it. And now what people are doing is they're using lights inside the greenhouse in order to, maybe if it's a cloudy day, there's not enough sunlight, so they want to turn on the lights and get more production. And the term has now evolved from light depth to mixed light. And so a lot of the licenses and the terminology in California has gone to mixed light. And that's how people look at the quality of cannabis sometimes, and they price it. So indoor might get the highest price. Mixed light is in second place for the next price. Light dep is still something out there, but it gets the third price. And then outdoor is
yeah,
the fourth and probably gets the lowest price in California. So now you have 4 tiers of cannabis to choose from. And they're all a little bit different and unique in their own ways. And I wouldn't say one is better than the other, because they all can be special and unique from any
yes, and
category.
different.
What
Yeah,
is your personal favorite style of growing, Eric? If you don't mind me asking.
I like the depths.
Okay.
The depths are
I'm
my
not judging.
yeah. Sun-grown depths are definitely the highest on my list.
I've had some fires.
Last
Like
year
that.
for the Emerald Cup, we had a sun-grown and outdoor won best of show for all of the categories, for indoor, mixed light, depths, the whole thing. It was an outdoor, and there's a lot of judges from Los Angeles that love indoor. They would love for indoor to be best of show, but it just didn't happen because the Terps weren't lying.
Yeah,
yes.
especially
There's
out here.
one
Yeah.
lying.
Yeah, like that. I've seen the mixed light stuff. I've seen CMH. I've seen not CMH, HPS,
HPS,
and I've seen
LED.
LED mix.
Yep.
As light dep, and they're everybody's trying out with so much technology available right now and everything coming out. Everybody's just trying everything out, and some of it's probably working without good science behind it. It's kind of working for them.
But
There's
still,
some
no one
good
can
ones
beat
out
the
there. There's
power
no
of the sun.
question. Yeah, the problem is there's this there's the thing going on in cannabis where a lot of companies are, I don't know, more is more, and there used to be the term less is more. And so I'm still a believer less is more sometimes, but people in cannabis right now are trying to push things full throttle. More is more lights, more nutrients, more. They
Yeah,
really want to go
they want to
crazy.
do
And
it
in
like
some
that.
ways,
You know, I've actually had to dial my. I was running. It was specifically on the book. It says run 3.0. EC, and I was like, okay, even in veg. And then I backed it down to 1.8, and I think this round looked better than any other round that I've ever hit. So, like you said,
that's
I think
good.
everybody's just push, 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 kind of forgetting about grow the plant.
Yeah, look at what the
Enjoy the
plant
plant.
wants, and
Yeah,
and yeah, there's certain metrics and things we can do to kind of check in on the plant to make sure that it's going in the right direction. But yeah, no, over the course of time, I've noticed that a lot of people are trying to drive them really hard, and it'll grow pretty good, but sometimes you lose the terpenes, and sometimes you lose the quality that goes along with the smoke and the experience. It might look really good. It
hmm
might look fantastic in the jar. It might be something that people look at and go, I want that in my pocket. I need that when I show my friends and open the jar. Look at this, look at this. But it really is just that. It's really looks, I mean, when I judge the Emerald Cup in particular, there's some amazing flowers. Some of them that look so good and they even smell so good. Then you go to smoke it and everything is ruined at that point. And so, uh, uh, it's easy to get your hopes up, I guess you could
yeah,
say.
right.
But I think with newer consumers and the recreational and the adult use side of things, it is really steered towards the looks. I think that the medical side really looked at a different side of quality than what the adult use side looks at now.
Okay, thank you for that, Eric. Because now I know, or a lot of people probably know better about light the vibration after you shared your the technique and the process, even the black box thing. Because what I know about black box is from the airplane, like
The black box
yeah,
airplane.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Like,
that's something else too.
That's funny.
yeah.
The original people doing black boxing before people were making flowers was to sex their plants. And so when you plant seeds, unless they're feminized, it's not always guaranteed that they're all going to be females. And so, the
Yeah.
the people do want to grow female plants and not as many males so that they don't
You
can
can
pollinate the rest of the crop. And yeah, we have seedless flowers to smoke, but um, what happens is when you plant all of your seeds, maybe you buy a 12 pack of your favorite seeds, you plant them all, and it can take a while before they show their sign, whether they're female or male. And you can put a lot of effort and a lot of energy into the plants, and then all of a sudden they become male, and most likely you have to cut it down. And when that happens, there's holes in your garden, there's missing plants all of a sudden, and that's not
It's tough. That's
necessarily a good
wasted
thing.
space, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's real
And so what
estate.
the old timers used to do is they would put their small plants in a cardboard box for one day to black box them in order to get them to sex. And so the technique of sexing was done to really small plants before they put them out into the field through black boxing. And then later, that was in the 70s. And then later into the late 80s, I think it was really the early 90s is where black boxing for flowers came into play.
Gotcha. That's pretty cool.
And earlier, when we were offline, Eric shared that he's been judging Emerald Cup for 7 years now, correct? Yes.
Yeah.
And I did meet a lot of growers recently that some of them they just started growing recently, but you being a judge for 7 years and you having farm experience for like 30 years already, I know like a lot of people who want to enter competition can probably like know more about like what's the criteria when they want to enter a competition. I know we've discussed like the look, the smell, and
hmm
but is there anything else that has not been mentioned yet with regards to the criteria that most judges are looking for when it comes to judging a strain?
Well, like I've talked to a few of the people that have won and asked them what they did to prepare for the Emerald Cup for their samples, and a lot of times I think this year or the last few years, the requirement for entry for this particular competition is 3 ounces. And so that 3 ounces, a lot of times you would want to, maybe dump that out on the table, go through it and make sure every single bud is trimmed and looks perfect. There's no small, really small, there's no shake. What they do with the samples also is they take one of the buds and they put it in a glass case. And so when people are at the Emerald Cup ceremony for the awards ceremony, you can go by this big glass case and you can look at every entry. So everybody gets to see what the entries look like, even maybe the sample size that I get. One of the winners one year looked at his sample that was in the case, and it had a big stem coming out of it, and it made him sick to his stomach. He said he couldn't, out of all the buds in there, he thought his work looked the worst, and he was the winner.
Oh.
And so he said, never again that'll happen. And so after that, he went through every bud and made sure it was perfect and it looked good. And so what happens is that sometimes people get very proud of their cannabis, I think, and they believe, just because they grew it themselves and they love smoke. It's easy to fall in love with your own cannabis. Don't get me wrong. I've, like some of the best cannabis I ever smoked was the stuff that I grew.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it was going to be a winner for a competition, though, even though I loved it that much. And I think back sometimes and I wish I could go back and have some of that stuff. It doesn't mean it was going to win the competition. And so when big buds get entered, they have to break them apart in order to get them into the samples. So sometimes you don't get to see the original flower that was maybe put into the competition. And there are some people that maybe think that their flower is so good that they can enter really small, like popcorn size pieces, or smaller micro buds, like really, really small, that, in some ways maybe smelled good. It rolled up okay, but it's not a winner because it's all this, tiny samples.
Not like a big
And so,
cola.
yeah, it's not it's hard to say that that's the, California's best when it's a bunch of almost shake. And then I've seen years stuff that was clearly machine trimmed. And so, you can see the little stems at the bottom that people will call crow's feet, is kind of a slang term. And so I think that maybe in my imagination that people thought that their flower was so good that they could machine trim it. And then when they got up to the podium as a winner, they were like, yeah, it's so good. We machine trimmed it and we didn't even care. Was that easy or something like that? And so when we see stuff that is machine trimmed and not cleaned up, the crow's feet, things like that, it's not going to win. It could make it to the top 10, maybe the top 20, but it's definitely not going to win because it's got a few things that were easily fixed before it was entered.
And people take that seriously, huh? I mean, they
yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I've had
there's been times where we do the hash and you find a hair in the hash, you find a hair in the bud.
Hash and a hair?
Yeah. A seed.
I've seen some like cat hairs or dog hairs in waxes, in buds. I've seen it.
Sometimes the trellis netting, the fibers of the trellis netting, which is common even in legalized cannabis right now.
That's a no automatically.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, it's bad. And it gets tough now because I think on the license side, the distribution maybe goes in and takes the samples. And so when you're a personal, home growers can enter. So when it's a personal entry, you definitely have full control.
Right.
Yeah. Did it cut off? Is he still there?
Did it cut off?
He'll come back. He'll come
Yeah.
back.
He'll come back. Oh, there you go. Sorry, it was choppy a bit, but yeah, we heard the first part.
Okay.
And also, since you've been going to other cannabis events, what's the most stoner thing that ever happened in like Emerald Cup or any other cannabis event that you've been to that you just can't forget? Because it's just a story that you just can never forget.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of funny things happen. I mean, throughout the day. But we at the Emerald Cup, when I was with the, so starting in 2006, I was with I started the first light deprivation greenhouse company with a partner I had, and I did that up until 2018. And so previous, when I was in the greenhouse company, we would set up a greenhouse at the Emerald Cup, and we would fill it with couches and food and try to make it like a lounge. And so people could come in and smoke, and we would hang out all day. And it was dry there too, because it would rain a lot of times during the Emerald Cup. So it was a dry place to go with comfortable couches and heat and that kind of thing. And so
Are those the VIP section now? The one with the lounges? Are those the VIP section now?
Well, I mean, they created their own VIP section. We kind of created our own outlaw VIP section, I guess you could say, because it was outside of the. Because back in the day when it was 215, before we went into the adult use, the 215 area, you had to have a prescription and a wristband to get in there.
Have it on you.
When people came from out of state, they didn't have a prescription or any of that kind of stuff. So they would just come into the lounge and you could smoke all you want. And you didn't need to worry about going over there. But some of the funny things that happened, I guess the coolest thing that happened for me was the people that came in there that we met. And so there was people like Ed Rosenthal that came through, and Robert C. Clark, some of the, book writers and people in cannabis. But for me, growing up, I used to listen to a band called the Grateful Dead.
Grateful Dead.
They used to travel around a lot in the Bay Area and places in California that we used to go to a lot of times. And so we were all into the Grateful Dead. And so one time I was sitting in the lounge just hanging out. There was lots of people and lots of couches, and we'd fill it with chairs and couches, and everybody'd be sitting and smoking. And it was one of those times that I had this banana OG, this flower that I grew myself, and I was sitting there. It was the last bud, and I was bummed that it was going to be gone soon, but we were enjoying smoking it and showing it around. And I looked over, and this lady was sitting next to me, an older lady, and she kind of looked familiar, but somebody I didn't know. And she just sitting there talking with people and hanging out. And, and I just had to ask, I go, what's your name? And, she told me Carolyn or whatever. And Carolyn is the name of, her nickname was Mountain Girl, Jerry Garcia's wife. And so I didn't realize it, but I was sitting next to Jerry Garcia's wife for all this time, smoking and hanging out. And for me, being a fan, I was kind of starstruck, I guess you could say.
Did you give her a banana OG?
Oh yeah, she said it was a little bit dry.
A little bit dry. She gave you an honest one.
A little bit dry.
I don't like it too dry that it turns into powder when you break it up, but I do like mine a little bit on the drier side than other people maybe. And so it was kind of shocking too. Her daughters were there, so I got to meet her Jerry Garcia's daughters, Trixie and Annabelle, and so that was a good memorable moment for me at the Emerald Cup.
It's like your stoner starstruck moment or something like that. Yeah. Also, have any exotic strains ever competed in Emerald Cup or any other cannabis events?
Like the real exotic.
Yeah, and
not the.
Like.
Well, I mean, what people sometimes I think look at as exotic, or when the word exotic started coming around in some ways, I think runts started getting popular at the same time.
No, not that one. Not me. Just kidding.
Yeah. Well, one of the years, the highest terpene award did go to Green Shock Farms with their Tropical Sleigh Ride. And so Green Shock Farms is in Mendocino County, and also over here where I'm at in what's called Nevada County. Even though we're still in California, the county I'm in is called Nevada. They have a farm also over here. And so I'd say the last 5 or 7 years, they've been in the awards for something, whether it's in the top 10, highest terpene, highest THC, something that Green Shock Farms has always gotten some place in. And the highest pineens haven't always won, and those what they consider exotic. But the Green Lantern that won one year from Ridgeline Farms was an amazing strain, and that was more of a sativa, the Green Lantern. And then he won 2 years in a row. Jason Gelman from Ridgeline Farms up in Humboldt also won with what he had was a runts that he selected called Ridgeline Runts. And that was an amazing runts. And that's why we call that one more of the dessert strain. The dominant terpene beta-caryophyllene is what you find in gelato cereal and milk, runts. All those strains smell very similar, even though they're different. The
Yeah.
dominant terpene is still beta caryophyllene, and so that's what they put in the dessert category. And so, since the Ridgeline Runts won, and Runts also has been very popular at other competitions and just in general, we see a lot. 52% of the entries for the Emerald Cup are dominated by beta caryophyllene. Only 1% or less are pinene.
And do you encourage the preservation of old strains too? Because, like, you know, let's say Blue Dream. I haven't really seen a lot of Blue Dreams lately, but I really love that strain from way back.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome, that's great medicine actually. And that's why I was saying, like, when we started getting people into adult use, we started getting away from the health and wellness. And I think a lot of medical people would agree with you. Blue Dream is a fantastic cultivar that a lot of people loved, but for some reason, when runts and these other exotics started coming in, people were making fun of things like Blue Dream. And maybe the consumers that were doing that were more interested in the adult use side of things and the looks and the way that was going. And the medical people were like, hey, where's my Blue Dream? It used to really was a good feeling I had. There's a lot of people that didn't like the looks of it. They didn't like maybe the smell. Some of the people that grew it maybe didn't like growing it. I don't know, but it grows really easy. But
Yeah.
you can find it in other states.
Yeah.
The funny thing is it's really popular in New York and with the medical community in New York, with Still Medical there. It's popular in Arizona. We're bringing it into Connecticut. There's a lot of states in the United States that have never experienced Blue Dream like we have. And so even though it's maybe washed out and kind of old news here in California, it still has a bright future in other states.
Yeah.
But why for me the Blue Dream? I mean, I smoked Blue Dream before, but when I smoke it, the effect for me doesn't like. I don't know. I don't like the effect. Instead
That's
of
because
making
No,
me
that's
like,
because you didn't
it's
grow it,
not like
man.
it's like the cannabinoid is not like it's not
'Cause you didn't
merging with
grow
my
it.
body. It was like this is not for you.
that's
This is not for you.
100% though.
Maybe,
Like,
yeah, cannabinoids in our
Yeah,
body.
but
Yeah.
no, but I like everything was in, but it's just not for me when I smoke it. I like it though, but it's not. I know the effect is just not for me. Like the cannabinoid is not, it's not merging.
I think there are still
no,
like a lot of
our
options.
bodies have to agree with
Yeah.
the
But I
terpenes
love
and the
purple haze.
cannabinoids.
The
But
purple
I
haze,
would
I've
say
been looking for that. I've been looking for purple haze for a long time. I can't even find it anymore.
that's a tough one to probably find. And I would say for me, is the citrus, like the orange terps and the citrus terps, the more orange type stuff,
Oh yeah, I like
tangies
those
and
too.
things like
Yes,
that.
tangy, tangy.
Yeah, it
Yes,
doesn't agree with me.
yeah.
It was
But for me, I
a
like that.
nice.
That's what
It's
you
a
like.
nice
Yeah, it's
smell.
preference.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes the oils. Sometimes I might not like the flower, but the oils are okay.
How do you guys like like Chem 91? That was one of my most favorite strains ever. Chem 91 and Chem Dog.
Okay, I'm
Between
dog.
those
Yeah,
Yeah,
two,
yeah, yeah.
those
Thumbs
things
up
put
on
me
those. Yeah,
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 off.
I like
yeah.
those
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Those man.
Let's bring it back.
I
Chem.
even had this.
yeah.
I had this strain in Apothecary, San Francisco, but this was probably in 2015, so it's just medical yet at that time. It's called Black Magic strain. That was the first time I've ever tried it. I haven't seen it anywhere else ever again, but I remember like I felt like I was like literally an astronaut floating like I feel
That's some
like that
good
was
meds.
like the highest I don't know, like the highest strain that I've ever felt, but I just never felt that way before. Like I mean, I just never felt that way again.
You know what brings back
Yeah.
memory? Remember the what you gave me, Eric, the OG Kush? Man, that bring back memory. Everything when I smell it and the effect, I was like, oh my god, where is this again? What's going on with
Yeah.
the flower? It was like,
Yeah. I still
And
have some of that OG.
oh no,
it's really nice. It's like
and
bring back
It
memory. And
it's
also,
2 years old now, and I still sprinkle it into joints. Like I blend it and stuff. And I'm not one that likes old weed, but man, this stuff has been so good, and it still has a lot of smell, even though it's 2 years old and it lost a lot of its color. It's kind of brownish, but man, when the weed's really good, it'll last a long time, no matter how you store it and what you
yes,
do with it. It might not be the best to smoke by itself, but like I said, blend it in with a little something else, and amazing.
I got some three-year-old Mac 1 that's still in the fridge.
Yeah, it
Uh,
can happen.
And I know
And
like
also,
we've been talking about like different weed strains and all that, but I just want also the Filipino people to know that even though we use weed here, it doesn't necessarily make us like criminals. It doesn't push us to do criminal acts. Like it's still in the
exactly.
news there. That's why we still need to voice it out because there's still that very bad stigma around cannabis in
Yeah,
the
because they've been
Philippines,
brainwashed that weed is like, make you kill
or
stuff
hallucinate
like,
or
yeah,
make you rape your
yeah,
relatives or something like that. But we all know, like, we know because we're here also, and we've seen how weed has progressed, not just the country, but everyone else in all aspects, like economically, medically. It has helped the whole country, and it's just the regulations. We need fair regulations running it.
Yeah, and I think what prohibition does sometimes is it also causes, what happens in the United States right now is a lot of the fake cannabis, the spice, and this, you know,
the spy.
synthetic terpenes and all this stuff are making people really sick. And so if they don't, really look
Yeah,
at the medical benefits and set up a legal framework and include everybody, they're going to have this problem with not just, people can grow their own and do their own thing, but the stigma is going to get worse because
Hmm.
people are going to get a hold of the wrong stuff, and it's going to make them sick, have these adverse reactions that you guys talked about, and people put it together with real cannabis.
Exactly.
The people that are scared of cannabis don't know the difference between the real stuff and the fake stuff, and they just hear the stories,
yeah.
and
And then they can
unfortunately
get
the
this fake
stories,
stuff at the smoke shops or any smoke
yeah,
shops. That's the
yeah, they
danger of it.
can. It's really easy to get, unfortunately, and that's the problem, is that
Easy.
that stuff gets easier and easier and more available, and then next thing you know, things go backwards sometimes. And
And then
so
they think
really
it's
they
the
need
real
to,
weed though. And then they think it's a real cannabis, but then it's not.
How
yeah,
do you
And
know
and then they
though?
get
Like,
addicted. And then they try the real
yeah.
cannabis. It doesn't give them the
uh,
same effect.
Yeah,
is it
well, a lot of
Yeah.
that stuff, I mean, they sell it in smoke shops, and I mean, I don't go to a lot of the different smoke shops, but I mean, like more of the tobacco shops, the smoke cigarette stores, and
I
Hmm.
see it
not
on liquor
not
um,
stores, man.
dispensaries?
no, not
No.
dispensaries. No, it's illegal, and it definitely gives us all a bad, look when that kind of stuff goes on, and so that's why the more that they prolong this, the better chance for some of that stuff to keep continuing the bad
It might
reputation.
harm other people too because it's not the real thing, and there's
And
probably
and
Hmm.
the
other
other
chemicals
the
involved.
other part of this is not just the bad stigma, um, because of what people, the general public, can put together, but also the lack of knowledge, just the lack of real, legit knowledge, like what we've been talking about for the past hour, or what you've been talking about for the past hour. And this is not just voodoo witchcraft. This is a business. You feed your family with this, with this idea. Everything we just talked about. It's a legit lifestyle. And I think that lack of knowledge needs to be, well, we need, thank you basically for helping us to expand, um,
And
you
understand
know,
more. And
yeah, help the
I
Philippines
open it.
understand more of what we do here, especially coming from you.
And
Yeah,
also
so
Yeah,
Kangen water and cannabis, how it's
yes,
connected.
yes,
yeah. Can
We
you
want to
talk
know.
about
We want to know about that
Kangen
because in the
water?
Philippines, there's people using Kangen stuff. I don't know, but it's not the same as
Is
the same
that
machine, but it's Kangen. So I
no,
mean,
I'm sure they
is
are.
that
I'm
how
sure
can they
there's
use it
alkaline?
to their
people in the
crops? Like if they
Philippines.
have these plants, they how can they use it? How can they help them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in the Philippines do have Kangen water. The company is called Enagic, and they're from Japan. They've been making these water ionizers since the 1970s. And not only do they ionize the drinking water, they also ionize the water to make a cleaning, and that same cleaning agent we can use on the plants. And so when it makes the water, one of the settings, it changes the water to hypochlorous acid, and that's the main ingredient in bleach. It smells like chlorine, and that actually is good for disinfecting our tools and supplies, and even our cloning equipment when we're our trays. We can even spray the plants with it, and it also makes another water at the same time out of a different hose called sodium hydroxide. And so the sodium hydroxide's a soapy type consistency, and it works good for pest management. And so we use that at our house for cleaning our pots and pans, and we can also use it for spraying our plants to get rid of pests and things like that.
Yes.
So it's a multi-use, but a lot of people do have them in their homes. Surprisingly, we just started using it a little bit for cannabis, and sure enough, we found a lot of different ways to use it. And
I
it's been
have
helpful.
so much bottles of bleach at my house.
But
Yeah, I
You get
don't.
drums eventually, you get buckets eventually. But yeah, bleach is my number one tool, both in the grow for cleaning and even out everything. Bleach is wonderful.
Smart, because hydrogen peroxide doesn't work as well. And with some of the viroids that we have in cannabis, especially in California, bleach is and hypochlorous acid are the number one killers. Alcohol won't do it.
Oh, I think Julie, you're muted.
oh, I thought you were muted.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that knowledge, because not only are we like it's such an honor for us to have you here and to interview you and to know more about light deprivation, Kangen water, and also
Yeah, we
just
got a lot of
greenhouse in
questions,
general.
but you know,
Yes, because also with what Kuya had said that the people they lack the knowledge, but they might be approaching the wrong people too. So at least having you here will give them like a better direction on who to check on if they really want to know more about greenhouse, or if they really are serious on pursuing like farming, cannabis farming. And just having you here, Joey Berger, and the other speakers that we've had here. We also had like other speakers like Nina Parks. She's into the cannabis equity programs, and I believe she was a guest speaker at Emerald Cup too. She's been
Oh, yeah.
our guest here too. So she's
Yeah.
she's Filipina, but I think she grew up here in America. But yeah, she's a big help with our advocacy too. And just having you here, we're so grateful. And
very grateful. Yes.
yes, and I'm just happy that you took the time to share your knowledge with us, because usually you're a teacher in Amsterdam. To have you speak, we might need to, like to do something else or something like what the university will give you. But you've really opened your schedule for us, and you didn't even give us a hard time connecting with you. But I'm just so happy that you're here, and
Yes,
we've
thank
learned
you.
so much from you. Thank
Well,
you, Eric.
thanks for having me, and I'd be happy to come back again sometime.
Yes,
So
yeah.
keep me posted on how things develop in the Philippines, and if we can circle back again someday, I'd be happy to do
We
that.
would love
Yes,
your
sir.
Yes,
We
yeah.
will love you to
Yes.
be there too.
Hopefully, we'll see you and Joey in person
With Joey.
soon. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we'd like to collaborate
And bring your
more.
family too.
Sounds-
They're gonna
yeah,
send
that would be
they're gonna
fun.
send you so much food and lumpia and pancit, bro. You don't even know.
Yeah, man.
Watch out, man. Watch out when you hook up with Filipinos.
A lot of seafood too.
Yeah, I want
Yeah,
it.
we
I'm ready.
really appreciate your
Yes.
time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I'm
Good
gonna
night,
end this
everybody.
stream, but the host and the guests, we can stay for a bit. We can talk privately, but I'll end the stream. We say good morning again to the Philippines, and
Good
again,
morning,
good evening,
Pilipinas.
California.
Magandang umaga sa Pilipinas.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Magandang gabi dito sa Amerika.
All right. Okay.